Okay, so let's talk about imperialism. It's a huge, complicated word, right? But what if I told you that the story most of us learned is really only half the picture? Today, we're diving into how one single period in history can create two totally opposite stories. One's about progress, and the other, it's all about destruction.
So how on earth is that even possible? I mean, one set of events, two completely different narratives. That's the big question we're going to tackle. And we're going to see how perspective, who's telling the story, changes literally everything.
All right, so the first major clash our source material points to is all about something deeply personal: culture. And right away, you see this fundamental disagreement. Wasn't what happened a generous gift of a new, better culture? Or was it straight-up theft of tradition? Let's unpack what each side was seeing and, more importantly, what they were feeling.
So let's start by trying to get inside the colonizers' mindset. From their point of view, a lot of what they were doing was seen as, well, benevolent. They honestly saw themselves as sharing these priceless gifts: their language, their religion, their way of doing things. In their version of the story, this was all a noble project to enlighten the rest of the world.
But, and this is a huge but, for the people actually being colonized, the picture couldn't be more different. This wasn't a gift. It felt like an attack. It meant their own languages were pushed aside, their spiritual beliefs were called primitive, and their entire heritage was being dismantled. It was a deep, painful loss of their traditions.
And this right here gets to the very heart of the divide. You've got one side that sees an extension and the other side that sees loss. The exact same action is seen as a positive, an act of giving by one group, and a devastating act of taking by the other. It's the same event, but it's creating two completely different realities.
Now, this massive difference in viewpoint doesn't just stop with culture, not even close. Our sources show us the exact same pattern plays out when we start talking about progress and modernization.
So, here we go again. We're faced with another core conflict. Was imperialism about building a modern, efficient world, the dawn of a new age? Or was it actually about destroying societies that were already there and already working? Let's look at the two arguments.
From the colonizers' vantage point, they were the architects of the future. They were building railways, ports, telegraph lines. They were setting up new governments and legal systems. In their story, they were bringing order and literally connecting the world.
But for the colonized, this wave of so-called progress often just meant destruction. That brand new railway, it might have cut right through ancestral lands. Those new colonial laws, they often wiped out complex traditional systems of justice that had worked for centuries. So this wasn't building, it was a total breakup of past institutions. It shattered the very glue holding their communities together.
So you see the dynamic again, right? What one group is proudly calling modernization, the other is experiencing as a violent breakup. The new thing wasn't just added on top of the old, it was often built by tearing the old thing down first.
Okay, so we've laid out these two clashing views on culture and on progress, but what's the big deal? Why is it so incredibly important for us to understand this today?
And this really brings us to the biggest takeaway of all. History isn't just a boring list of facts and dates in a textbook. It's a living, breathing collection of human experiences. And those experiences are powerfully shaped by who is telling the story. The event itself is one thing. How people lived through it is something else entirely.
Let's just quickly recap the main points here. First, it's totally possible for a single event to create opposite realities for different groups of people. Second, those big words we use like progress and culture, they're never neutral. They're always loaded with the perspective of whoever's talking. And maybe most important of all, you just can't get the full story unless you make the effort to see it from both sides. Which kind of leaves us with one last question to think about. This whole framework, it doesn't just apply to imperialism. Think about it for a second. What other parts of history have you learned where you might have only ever heard one side of the story? It's a pretty powerful lens to apply to everything we think we know. Thanks for tuning in.